Hi, I'm Casey McQuiston. I am the author of Red, White, and Royal Blue, One Last Stop, and this book, The Pairing, out most recently in the UK. Years ago, when I was writing my first book, Red, White, and Royal Blue, and I looked around at the kind of representation of bisexuality that I saw in media, it seemed that we were always either a punchline or a problem. There was some kind of negative association with finding out that someone you liked was bisexual, whether it meant that they were secretly gay, or that they were always going to cheat on you, or that they couldn't be trusted, and that was just the very few examples that there were. And I feel that in the years since then, we've seen the depiction of bisexuality really broaden and expand, and we have so many wonderful shows, whether it's, shows for younger people like Heartstopper, or, film and TV and literature for all kinds of queer adults. I think that we've seen such a growth and a broadening in what being bisexual can look like in media. But I still feel like there's always farther that we can go. I kind of think of The Pairing as my first post-COVID book. So much of the pandemic and all of that time was about isolation, about staying inside, and certainly about being careful about what you put in your mouth. And I really wanted to reconnect with the joy of eating and drinking and traveling and being out in the world and touching things and feeling things. And so I decided I wanted to write a book that was all about that. And what better way to do that than an international food and wine tour through Europe. And so that was kind of where I began, but I also knew that I really wanted to try a different kind of pairing than I had done before, no pun intended. And so I decided to write about two exes getting back together, and I knew that I wanted both of them to be bi, because I think that there are a lot of misconceptions about what it does and doesn't mean to be bisexual. There are a lot of stereotypes. There's a lot of fear of stereotypes, and one of those stereotypes is that all bisexual people are promiscuous or slutty or whatever. And I think it's important to push back on stereotypes, but sometimes we go so far in the wrong direction that we almost treat anyone who is a slutty bisexual negatively. And I personally know and love many slutty bisexuals, and so I wanted to do this one for them and for me. Theo is one of the main characters of this book, and over the course of the book, we get to understand that they are non-binary and that they've figured this out in the time since their breakup with Kit. And we also get to experience Kit coming to know and love Theo for everything that they are. And to me, that is something very, very close to my heart, and very much rooted in some of my experiences with exploring gender and how it interacts with queerness, and how it can really enrich and broaden the dynamics in my relationships. And so I really wanted to show these two characters who are only brought closer by this thing that has blossomed and changed since they split up. And so I think there's something deeply romantic about someone who completely accepts and understands you and sees every facet of you the way that Theo wants to be seen. Is there anything that I can share about the sequel? What a good question. I'm going to play it safe and say that I can share that I've been working on a script, co-writing it with Matthew Lopez, who wrote and directed the first movie, which I know so many readers know and love, and so I can say that we've been working on that script, and that I've spoken to a lot of the cast about the sequel, and that they're all so excited about it and about hopefully moving forward with the next steps. I think what you can expect from the sequel is a glimpse into Alex and Henry's life sort of after the confetti has finished falling from the first movie, and you have to move forward together as two adults in a real serious adult partnership with pressures and expectations and dreams that might be coming into conflict with each other, and things that might be pulling them and pushing them in different directions, and how they navigate that together. So as vaguely as possible, that's what I'm allowed to say. As a child, I was a huge fan of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and the pink Power Ranger especially was a huge awakening for me that girls were very cute. And so when I think of my first crushes, one of the first characters that comes to mind is the pink Power Ranger. So I would say that was a very formative piece of media for my young queer self. Some of the first times that I felt really seen or saw something that made me feel excited in a way that I can now see was because it was speaking to me as a queer person, was when I was in high school and I started reading classic literature and I discovered Oscar Wilde for the first time. And there's this certain type of queer, inherently queer humor and wit in Oscar Wilde's work that just resonated so deeply with me, and I still have my dog-eared and highlighted and annotated copy of The Importance of Being Earnest that I thought that was just the funniest, most clever, most unforgettable thing that had ever spoken to me as a reader. And then I read Picture of Dorian Gray, which is one of the gayest books ever written, and I was 15 and thinking, there's something about this that really hits for me, but I can't really figure out what it is yet. So those are some of my early influences. Do I think Pride should go back to being a protest? I absolutely do, and I think especially in the US, where I'm from, it feels like the perfect time for Pride to be a protest. The first Pride was a riot. I live in New York City, where the first brick was thrown, and it feels every day like we're just ready to fight. And so I would love to see Pride become a fight again. The advice that I would give to young queer people, especially young trans people and non-binary people, both back home for me in the US and here in the UK, is that there is absolutely nothing wrong with you. And throughout anything that happens, I hope that you can hold on to that truth, that there is absolutely nothing wrong with you, nothing wrong with the way that you express yourself or the way that you were made or the way that you feel most authentically yourself. And you will always be happier as that person than you would any other type of way. And anyone who tells you differently is absolutely full of and I love you very much. And there are a lot of people in this world who love you very, very, very much, exactly as the wonderful, strange, beautiful, queer, trans person that you are.